Okay, welcome to the April 28th meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
The flag
to the flag of
of the United States of America and to the republic
for
for
which it
which it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that. Item 2 on the agenda, or item 3 on the agenda is public comment. The way we have been conducting public comment since we began these remote meetings is as follows. Right now, all of the non-board members and non-town administrator have their audio muted. And what we will do is, at the beginning of public comment, we'll unmute everyone, and then we'll ask those interested in public comment to state their name, and if they're appearing by telephone, to state their name and the last 4 digits of their phone number so we can identify them. So everyone will state that they want to participate in public comment. Then we will mute all the lines again, so we don't hear feedback and hear things in the background. And we will unmute each person who wants to participate in public comment individually. So you'll have your own opportunity to speak without background noise from other people. So again, we'll unmute all the lines, ask anyone who wants to participate in public comment to state their name. If they're on the phone, state their name and the last 4 digits of their phone number so we can identify them. And then we'll mute all the lines and go one by one with those who want to participate. So, Hillary, if you can unmute all the lines. All right, I think all the lines are unmuted. And so anyone who wishes to participate in public comment, please state your name. And if you're on the phone, state your name and the last 4 digits of your phone number. Again, any participants in public comment, please speak now. One last time, participants in public comment, going once, going twice. All right, so it doesn't appear that we have any participants in public comment. So Hillary, I'm gonna ask you to mute the lines again, other than the board members and Mr. Dennehy, please. And we will go to item 4. Which is COVID-19 update. Our public health director, director of our health department, Carolyn Kinsella, is not available tonight. She wanted to report that there are 2 additional cases of COVID-19 in Milton today. So 2 additional cases. And she will be available to participate at our next meeting, whether it be later this week or next week. We hope she'll be available. We expect she will be. So that's the only update on that. The other COVID-19 update is along the lines of a notice. Hillary, if you could put up the flyer for the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. If you could share can you do that, Hillary?
Yes, bear with me just one moment.
Yep, take your time, take your time. Again, in a minute we'll have a flyer. I'll just highlight it briefly. The Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition is beginning on May 6th their webinar Wednesdays, and they're devoting these. There it is. There's the flyer. The Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition is beginning their webinar Wednesdays, and they were going to be devoting those sessions beginning on May 6th and then continuing weekly thereafter throughout May, 30-minute webinars with question and answer on different issues related to COVID-19, including what to do with teens and tweens, mental health, and other issues. So there's the flyer. It's going to be on Wednesdays, and I believe they're at 7 o'clock in the evening. And so look for the flyer. We'll try to get that up on our website so everyone can be aware of it. But it begins on May 6th, 7 p.m., and then every Wednesday thereafter. Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, as always, stepping up and doing a great job to try to help the community in a time of need. So that's something we'll try to get up. So and you see on the screen the website www.milton-coalition.org, and so you can see the flyer there. And again, we'll try to get that up on the website so we can publicize that so people be aware of it. Okay, so Hillary, if you could take that off. Do we have anything else on the COVID-19 update? I was going to, without objection from the members and without objection from Ms. Stanton, actually go to item 6, which is the face coverings issue, because it relates to COVID-19. So I was going to, if you don't mind, Christine, move to that. I don't know if anyone has anything additional. I mean, we did hear today that the governor has extended the period for non-essential workers through non-essential people, non-essential businesses providing services through, I believe it's May 18th of this year. So that period has been extended for 2 weeks. I don't know if there's anything else before we get to the face covering issues.
Mr. Chair, it's Richard. I have just one question, one comment. There's an email I wrote to you last night, kind of a rules of the road going forward as we come out of this. If you could just forward that to the rest of the members so they have it to review, I'd appreciate that.
We can put that on the agenda, Richard. If we can put that, I think it makes sense. We can put that on the agenda for the next meeting.
That's fine. I really wanted, as long as the members all get to see it, start to think about it, because as I've said before, and I think we all know this isn't going to be a flick of the switch that, okay, it's over, move on. I think there's a lot of issues, as I noted, going back historically, looking at other more natural and man-made disasters that have affected this country, and especially for monies going forward, whatever monies we may want to capture. I'm sure if Caroline's already read this, she'll agree, as will Lieutenant Caputo. So if you could just forward that to everyone so they have it, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, yeah, sure. If it hasn't been, we'll make sure that, and we'll put it on the agenda, because to the extent that we start talking about issues, and I know Mike Dennehy, the town administrator, has been already planning for the transition, and I'm sure Christina has as well, and Caroline. So I'm sure those things are in process, but good to talk about them publicly and to get that all out in the open sooner rather than later. So we'll definitely do that. All right. So without objection, we can go to item 6, which is the discussion of the requirement to wear face coverings. Now our board has within its authority issued an advisory for people to wear face coverings. At the last meeting, we discussed briefly the issue of the mandatory order that some communities are putting into effect. And we had asked town council to look into this. The word back, and Kevin Freitag is on the call, can speak to it, but the word back is that this is really a Board of Health issue. The Board of Health has the authority to issue an order with respect to face coverings. At least that's the way it's been done in other communities, and that's the guidance from the Attorney General, that this is a Board of Health. The Board of Health has the authority on this. My understanding is that the Board of Health will soon be taking up for consideration an order along the lines of what Quincy has put into place. But the Board of Health may want some feedback from our board about what our board's view is on this. At least that's my understanding. They may want some thought about what this board thinks about that. So that's I think where this is at this point. Kevin Freitag, do you have anything to add beyond that? Kevin, are you? Hillary, could you unmute Kevin?
Can you hear me now, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, sorry about that, Kevin. Sorry.
Not a problem. I'm happy to provide a quick overview of some of the different orders that have been issued by the towns, and also the most recent guidance that came out yesterday from the AG's office regarding those orders, if you like.
Well, I think my understanding is the Board of Health is really more interested in the Quincy model.
Yes.
And so you might give an overview of that.
Absolutely. So just to provide a bit of a timeline here on the, let's look here. Back on the 15th of April, the AG issued some guidance in which, among other things, the AG's office opined on these face covering orders. And at that time, the AG's office issued some guidance suggesting that the select boards in towns had the authority to go ahead and issue advisories that would suggest that people in the town continue to follow and abide by the orders that had been put into place by the governor and by various state agencies. Sort of on the heels of that, Braintree and Quincy, within the past week or so, issued their own orders in which they sort of took it a step further, and they have required that members of the public wear face coverings while in certain places. So while, for instance, going into restaurants for pickup, or going inside essential businesses, or going into residential or commercial building complex of greater than one unit, the public has been ordered in Braintree and Quincy to wear face coverings in those situations. And again, these orders rely on statutes and regulations that all relate to the Board of Health. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, Somerville and Cambridge have sort of taken it one step further. They've gone as far as to order people in public over the age of 4 to wear face coverings. They've also attached some fines in their orders for violations of that order. Those orders, it's my understanding, are going to go into effect tonight at midnight. And then as recently as yesterday, the AG's office came out and is sort of taking the position that municipalities can, through their boards of health, issue orders regarding the wearing of face coverings. So the most recent order or guidance from the AG's office has certainly supported what Braintree and Quincy appear to have done, which is require wearing of face masks in certain businesses, like the essential businesses that have been identified by the governor's office.
Thank you, Kevin. Questions or comments from the members?
I do, Mr. Chair. If it's, oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. Someone else does first. I'll go second.
Ms. Conlon, did you have something? Oh, no. Sorry, Richard. I jumped the gun. I saw a face movement. I thought you did. You can go ahead, Richard.
So I concur with Kevin. These are Board of Health initiated. I believe, Kevin, it's a CMR they're working under. I've gone to Quincy a good half dozen times now to various different establishments to see how they run it. It's the signs are very prominent, and the staff at the facilities will stop you immediately, whether it's a Stop and Shop or even something like Curry Hardware, which is right on our border, and advise you that you can't come in unless wearing a face mask. And I think that's the guidance, and I know Caroline's not on this, I think that's the guidance in a lot of our businesses and people, town buildings. I believe in Quincy, Kevin, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I believe it applies in public facilities, the police station, city hall. I believe it applies there as well. Am I correct on that?
I don't have that in my notes. I'd have to go back and take a look at the order to confirm
Okay,
that.
and the final
certainly
thing,
makes sense.
I sent this to Hillary. I don't know if you got it, Kevin, today for dissemination. Governor Baker spoke at length about this today, how he's issued 2 advisories, but he feels that the enforcement action and the teeth, whether you choose to go as aggressively as Cambridge or Somerville, some others have, with punitive fines, the teeth of that comes from the local public health and the enforcement of that. And so he's leaving those decisions to boards, on the local level, which I think is a smart choice.
Thank you, Richard. Other comments or questions from the members?
Mr. Chair, go ahead.
Katie?
I guess I would just add that I appreciate the Board of Health asking for our input. We did get an email today from a resident who had a different view, and I think we should share that with the Board of Health just so that they're considering all viewpoints when they take this into account. In driving around, I see a lot of people out not wearing face masks, and so I would support the Board of Health issuing some kind of a stronger order. I really don't like the idea of fines, at least for a first or a second offense, maybe a second offense. But I think that first, in terms of enforcement, the goal should be just to educate people. And if someone is seen outside without wearing a face mask, I think, whether it's the health representative or the police, because I assume they would have a role, then it really should be directed first and foremost at educating people rather than punitive.
Other comments, Ms. Collins?
So I agree with what Katie was saying, and I think we need to share that with the Board of Health, the email. As far as education, one of the things on the Braintree order helped people understand the proper use of masks. So I think that could be part of our education. I know that it's Board of Health, but I wanted to highlight the excellent video that the health department did last weekend, and things like that could really help if we could disperse that something like that more widely as well, because as Katie said, the education is the key piece. And I just think people are under so much stress and strain that I'm not sure fines would actually help. And I guess again, it's not really our call, but I question that. And also when people are already out of work, maybe it's a fine is difficult. I think too, it would be good to help people get masks or whatever it is they need for a covering too in some way. I'd be happy to help with that.
Other comments or questions? So it sounds like the general view of the board is supportive of a mandatory order of some kind by the Board of Health, and perhaps along the lines of what Quincy has done, which does not include any kind of fines. This board has done what it can do, and I believe there are signs up with our advisory. But to have, as Richard says, some teeth in it to make it a mandatory order from the Board of Health, I happen to believe would be helpful, would be useful, would be beneficial. So, any other comments or questions? Yes, comments.
I do want to say, I think for our town is not Cambridge, and to think about small children dealing with that, that gives me some real pause. I think people are already having some you can read things all over about kids already having trouble not being in school and not having their sort of familiar routine, and it's important to, I think, shelter children while protecting them, and I'm not sure what the balance is, but I do have a concern about that.
Any other comments or questions? So I believe town council will be preparing something for consideration by the board, and they'll be taking it up. And
Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question to town
Yeah,
council
please.
before he goes on this?
yeah, please. Yeah.
So Kevin, am I correct though on the Quincy order and the Braintree order, that it only applies to going into facilities, that if you're out in public, walking in the street, the mask requirement it's not a public, open public wearing the mask. It's more the types of facilities that you talked about. Am I right in that or am I wrong?
You're right. If you look at the Quincy order, it specifically addresses where individuals are to be wearing the masks. They talk about essential businesses, restaurants, all employees of essential businesses, and any resident or member of the general public entering or exiting a residential or commercial building complex of greater than one unit. So they are quite specific in the locations. And to your point about the police stations, I think that the police stations would certainly qualify as being part of the essential workforce. So they're going to be covered in that, the first paragraph or the first portion of the order as being a location where people are supposed to be wearing masks. That would seem to make sense to me. But you're right, it's in certain locations, it's not just in the public. Somerville and Cambridge have gone farther than that, and they've just said if you're out in public and you're over 4, you're supposed to have a face mask on.
Yeah, I'm more comfortable with Quincy. That's what I thought. I agree with Melinda. We're not Cambridge, and I understand the mental. People are going to come out, kids, things like that. And I believe Dr. Fauci reiterates that if you're going to go out to walk, exercise, things like that, he doesn't really. The social distancing is more the issue. I believe what Quincy and Braintree have. It's entering these establishments. The COA here is eventually going to open their doors one day. We're going to have to. I think masks are going to be around here for a little while, and I'm glad that we're at least doing what we can to help the Board of Health in this, because they're going to be in this fight for a while. Thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else? Anything else on that? Kevin, thank you, and you'll be connecting with the Board of Health on that. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. We'll go back to item 5. Update on the Council on Aging. So Hillary, if you could unmute our director of our Council on Aging, Christine Stanton, who's here to provide us with an update on what is happening with the Council on Aging in this brave new world we're in. Oh, you're still muted, Christine. Hold on a second. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Zulus, members of the board, for inviting me to give a brief update on how the Council on Aging has been faring in this very difficult time. We've been continuing our van transportation. My van drivers are doing a wonderful job of still providing medical transport to people who need it, as well as grocery stores for those who choose to still go to the grocery store. We've been fortunate to have roughly 20 people reach out to volunteer to do shopping for seniors and run errands. And I'm really pleased with that. We haven't even had to call many of them. There's so many. So it's such an example of the fabulous residents of the town wanting to help seniors. We've been making a lot of outbound calls just to touch base with people. Loneliness is something that is, rampant with elders who live alone. So we've been trying to touch base with people. All inbound calls are being answered and either connected with a volunteer for errands to be run, or for someone needing more support to a human service agency like South Shore Elder Services, connecting people to Meals on Wheels, things that they probably did not need prior to this pandemic. I secured a donation of masks from a neighbor of mine who is making them for elders in town, and I was able to connect the activities director at Winter Valley and Equity House with a good amount of masks. And we've been utilizing our Facebook page to get the word out. If any senior does need a mask, I do have some and I'm willing to deliver them. What we're working on now is right on March 16th, believe it or not, the day that we closed, we were scheduled to do a staff training on the My Senior Center database software program that both my board and the Friends of the Council on Aging were thrilled that we were going to computerize the database for the center and get records computerized, which now is really what we need. So in order to contact people, now that everything is going virtual, I think programming down the road is going to be going virtual. And so what we're doing this week is my staff and I are doing a mass mailing to over 800 seniors that we have in our current database to, with a letter and a questionnaire, trying to gauge their technology IQ, what they have available, so that we're able to offer virtual programming going forward. And also to acquire email addresses so we're able to contact them, do email blasts. Up till this point, we have only had the telephone, US mail in order to contact people. So updating the database is huge. I'm also, in the letter that's going out with the questionnaire, I've also worked with Town Clerk Galvin to mention absentee voting, to try to have seniors vote absentee and early and eliminate their need to go to the polls, especially because senior citizens are the most vulnerable and we want to protect them. I've also been actively participating on calls with the Massachusetts Council on Aging and connecting with other directors on the South Shore to see where they envision senior centers going. I don't believe I'm going to be able to host 100 people for a luncheon going forward. And you know, how is it going to even impact a mahjong game or a bridge or something like that? Can 4 people sit that close and play and share playing cards and things? So a lot of ideas being presented, getting seniors introduced to the Zoom technology. And, you know, a lot of them who don't have email, just getting them up to speed on that. I think that's the way we're going to be going in the near future. So updating the database, contacting people, seeing what programming that we can bring virtually, as well as provide social services and things like that, help, you know, younger seniors who are suddenly finding themselves unemployed that need help getting on Medicare and things like that. So I'm excited to get the database up and running. That's going to really be the glue that's going to keep us going and able to reach out to the seniors in town.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for all your efforts and for being able to kind of shift the nature of the services that you provided. Questions or comments from the members?
Christine, this is Katie. You came in at a very difficult time. I can't imagine starting a new job in a position as important as the Council on Aging Director, where we have so many senior citizens in Milton, and within a few weeks, suddenly we have a global pandemic on our hands, and that has upended everyone's world, and certainly yours over at the Council on Aging and everyone who works there at the COA. So congratulations on all the good work that you and the group are doing. And keep it up. And if there's anything that we can do to help, I'm sure we'd all love to help you in any way we can, whether it's getting out the word or at our meetings, spreading news about what some of your activities are or what you're developing ways of doing things might be. But I just wanted to say great work, and I hope it continues, and let us know how we can help.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that I had really only been on the job roughly 60 or 70 days, and then we were shut down. I was really pleased with the way things were going. The programming was booming and usership was up in the center. So I just hope to keep the good feeling and of community going virtually, which is difficult for seniors, but we're going to work on it.
Mr. Chair?
I saw Ms. Collins, Richard.
No, Richard.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Richard. Go ahead, Richard.
No, Katie, Melinda, go ahead. Melinda can go.
Oh, well, no, I was just going to say, echo what Katie said. Thank you very much to you and your staff. This is difficult and in the best of time.
Melinda, you just froze on us. Hello? Hillary, could we try to get Melinda a word that she froze on us?
Yes.
All right. Well, Richard, why don't you go ahead while we wait for Melinda to thaw out a little bit.
I just want to echo both Melinda and Katie, but to Christine, you just have to have faith. This will be a chapter in your book of your professional life at the COA when it ends, and as you will see again in the future, sometimes we've got hiccups. You just get thrown into the high-speed lane very quickly, but we all have faith in you, as do all the seniors who count on you. So we'll get through this, and you will have a Mahjong game, and you will have a St. Patrick's Day party, and you will get back to that. It may take a little while, but have faith. It always takes. It always seems to help us in times of crisis like this.
Thank you very much.
Other comments or questions from the members? I'm going to give I'm going to give Melinda a minute. I think she's probably trying to dial back in or get back in.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just
yes, please.
To the viewing audience and any of the our senior population that haven't reached out, just let them know that Christine's phone and her staff is on all the time, and there's no issue too small if there's something you need. 617-898-4893. They're still doing shopping. One of the drivers is a neighbor of mine, and the admiration that he feels for doing that service, he cherishes it, especially in this day and age. Again, there's no issue too small. I want to thank Christine and all of her staff, the drivers, everyone in the office for accommodating in such uncharted waters. But just let the public know that there will be someone on the other end of the phone that can provide service to you.
Thank you, Mike. And Melinda will be back. Apparently, she's going to try to dial back in. Her computer froze. Oh, there she is.
Now.
Oh, there she is. Melinda, did you want to? You got cut off a little bit. Do you want to? Oh, there you are. Okay.
I'm back. Yeah. Sorry about that. Computer crash. No, I just wanted to echo that, and also the offer of any help. I don't know what we can do, but we're here, and I know that you're a creative bunch, and you'll figure out ways for people to do things together, and even people who don't have tech. So you'll do a great job.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you to you, and thank you to your staff.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for the report today. Much appreciated. All right. Thank you. So you're free to stay or free to go, Christine, whichever you. If you want to listen to our discussion of the FY20 and 21 budget, you're welcome to do it. But we're going to move to item 7, which is a discussion of the FY 2020 budget. And I'm going to ask Hillary to unmute Amy Dexter, who I see 2 Amy Dexters, which is quite something. And then I think I see Sheila Varela and Elaine Craighead as well. So please unmute them. And is there anyone else from the schools, Sheila, for this discussion?
Well, Mary and Glenn were supposed to call in. Are they not on?
Oh, I think I see Glenn.
Earlier.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I see Glenn.
They are on under SBMP.
Oh, okay. All right. So they're on. So Mary, Glenn, Elaine, Sheila, Amy Dexter. And so this is a discussion of the FY20 budget, which is the budget that is that we are currently working under. until June 30th this year. So I'm going to ask our Finance Committee, Katie Conlon and Melinda Collins, to lead us through first the discussion of the FY20 budget, and then we'll go to FY21. Katie, do you want to take it first? Or?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we actually wanted to focus on the FY21 budget tonight. I don't think there's more we can say about FY20 than what we reported at the last meeting, which was that we think that by departments essentially putting out a spending freeze, for lack of a better term, back in March when all of this first happened and the stay-at-home advisory went into effect, the town administrator did talk with department heads about freezing some spending and trying to free up as much funds as possible in department line budgets so that we can do some year-end transfers if necessary, or hopefully allow some free cash to be built up for next year. So we think that although we're anticipating some reduction in some revenue sources for FY20, the bigger issue is FY21, and we think FY20 is manageable at this point. Mike or Amy or Melinda might want to add to that, but that was what we reported at a prior meeting, and that really hasn't changed. We focused our finance meeting yesterday on FY21.
Anything from Mike, or comments or questions from the members?
Mr. Chair, if I might add, there was another phone call with the Baker-Polito administration today, and the Division of Local Services Director, Sean Cronin. Again, I have to once again thank our state electeds and the representation of the Baker-Polito administration. They've been fully transparent. There's been sometimes multiple meetings every week. On the phone call today, the question came up about 9C cuts. They're not anticipating any at this time. And they are hoping to provide a clearer picture for FY21 either at the end of this week or early next week. So understandably, the governor moved the non-essential stay-at-home order to the 18th, so that there's a group that's been put together to try to figure out the economic impact of when to reopen and how. But at this time, it looks like the FY20 budget is going to stay intact. And to Member Conlon's point, they echoed her sentiment today that FY21 is what they're focusing most of their attention on.
Comments or questions from the members? All right, hearing none, we will keep our eye on that, obviously, and we'll you know, should things change, we'll obviously have to adapt as things go along. Let's move on to item 8, which is the FY21 budget. And Glenn, I'm just going to ask you if you can, because we're getting a little bit of background, if it's possible for you to mute yourself when you're not on, just to make sure we don't get too much background. So now we're going to talk about the FY21 budget, which is apparently of moment with both locally and statewide. So Katie, do you want to take us through that as well?
Yeah, I thought I should maybe give an overview and then turn it over to Mike and Amy to provide a little more of the detail. But our finance committee met yesterday and last week with the school finance subcommittee, and we had a good discussion at both meetings. Where we came out yesterday was that we think that because of all the unknowns and uncertainties, and folks like Sean Cronin from DLS at the state level talking about cities and towns preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, that we could be looking at some pretty substantial cuts in unrestricted general government aid. It's a little less clear on Chapter 70, and I'll defer to Glenn to talk about what he's expecting based on past practice with Chapter 70, which is education aid. But, and we're also expecting that we'll have lower new growth numbers, lower local receipts, and Amy can get into a little more detail on that. But the bottom line really is that based on the projections that we're making, and again, this is based on information that we have, which is really a guess. We don't have any real guidance from the state, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knows how this is all going to play out. But the approach that we thought we should take is to, for FY21, to level dollar departmental budgets at FY20 levels and then adjust them for step and lane and salary wage increases. So that we're looking at level dollar plus contractual amounts such as salary and wage increases. And that would leave us with a gap of a shortfall of about 2.5 to 3 million that we would be looking to close. So we're looking at recommending to the boards and to the warrant committee and to town meeting, if the boards and the school committee agree, that we would use some one-time monies such as free cash and possibly the stabilization fund. And we had previously, under the budget that we all approved in February, about $800,000 of free cash was directed toward capital items. And there were other funds such as the Capital Stabilization Fund, the OPEB Trust, the Affordable Housing Trust, other aspects that were going to be funded, other aspects of town government that were going to be funded with free cash. So we're looking at really revoking all of that and redirecting it towards the operating budget. And then seeking town meeting's approval, and we'll need a 2/3 vote from town meeting, to take up to $1 million from the stabilization fund in order to fund the FY21 budget. So we'd be looking at taking a substantial amount of free cash and $1 million from stabilization in order to fund our operations in FY21. So that's really kind of an overview of where we were at. And I think maybe we could have Mike and Amy speak to a little more of the detail. And I know we wanted to have the school representatives to weigh in with their thoughts, especially on Chapter 70, but also their thoughts about the stabilization fund and free cash.
Mike, Mike, do you want to, Mike and Amy, do you want to do that?
Sure.
And then
Sure.
we'll-
Member Conlon did a great job of describing the situation. I think we're being very conservative. If you believe some of the whispers that you hear at the State House, there could be, anywhere from 15 to 25% cut in consensus revenue. So what we anticipated was about a 20% cut in that, and we worked our numbers from that. Subsequently, we're part of a listserv on some South Shore communities, and we've been collectively kind of surprised that some of the other communities aren't taking the approach that we are. There is one community in Norfolk County who seems to be heading in the same direction we are, where they're talking about a substantial cut to state and local aid. And then Amy has taken a shot at some of the local receipts that we have, understanding that the restaurants have been closed and will be further closed for another 2+ weeks by the governor, and what that impact will be, whether the economy rebounds in a V-shaped, or whether if it's more prolonged and there's a U-type recovery. So we're very conservative in how we're estimating this, and I want to thank both committees for sitting down. It's a very productive discussion, understanding that we've gotten as much guidance from the state as we can get at this time. So this is a very conservative approach. Sean Cronin, the Director of Local Services, did stress that when you're putting your FY21 budget together, the revisions, that you predict for the worst and hope things get better, and that's what we're doing here. So very conservative approach to trying to understand all the ambiguity that's going on.
Thank you, Mike. If there's nothing more that need to be added, I'll ask on that side. I'll ask Sheila. Sheila, do you have any thoughts, or do you want anyone on the school side to weigh in on this? I know you've been involved in the finance committee discussions, but just from the school side specifically, any issues to highlight?
No, I don't. I mean, unless Glenn wants to talk about Chapter 70 a little bit. I mean, as chair, and I know Elaine is chair of the finance subcommittee, we concur with the fact that, under the given circumstances, we think this is the best route to take. It's interesting to hear Mr. Dennehy say that some towns are not, I guess, being more conservative, and the fact that we're pulling all of our positions off the table for 2021. So there's no, so of course there's no cuts in the bus. It's still very hard because of enrollment. Enrollment's not going down, and et cetera, et cetera. But we do feel that by talking it through and with all the good work that Glenn and Amy meeting together along with Mike, this is the best possible go forward next step. So we're grateful for the meetings and working together. And, I'm going to be hopeful, prepare for the worst, that maybe we might get something, we might be able to put one or two things back. We'll see, but we'll just have to take those next steps. And I don't know, Glenn, if you want to speak to Chapter 70 a little bit.
I actually think that'd be helpful if, Glenn, if you unmute yourself and just address Chapter 70 for a moment.
Sure. I mean, this year, with the Student Opportunity Act, there was a dramatic increase in Chapter 70 for Milton. We actually did very well on it. Many communities got very minimal changes, but it recognized some of the shortcomings in the formula as it was reflected in our demographics. So in the past, when we look back to 2008, 2001, and other times, the legislature has been very reluctant to run Chapter 70 backwards from where it was. Generally speaking, part of Chapter 70 is a certain amount of you might want to call it hold harmless aid. This year it was the $30 per full-time equivalent student that every town and city across the state got. There's some formula like that that's been in effect every year for the last 25 years or more, some minimal amount. But even in the worst of times, that was the amount that was still maintained. The cuts tended to be in other areas. Now, in our case, what we did, where we had roughly $1.2 million in new Chapter 70 money, about 125,000 of that was that sort of hold harmless aid, but the rest was new aid due to the Student Opportunity Act. And we've been talking, on our listservs in various places about what's likely to happen with that money. Is the act going to be delayed a year? Is it going to be partially funded this year and partially funded the next year? So basically, the take that and Amy and I took together was we just said, let's say it's not going to happen this year. We're just going to get the minimum amount, and let's take the Chapter 70 money off the table and say that's got to be our scenario that we're going to work under. Again, in the oft repeated plan for the worst, hope for the best line, that's what we're doing. So it was our judgment to take, basically to reduce our expectation of Chapter 70 funds by roughly $1.1 million, and treat that as part of the deficit that we're looking at going into fiscal 21.
Thank you, Glenn. Other comments or questions from the members?
Chair,
Ms.
can
Conlon.
I just add, I don't think I mentioned at the beginning that one of the things that we talked about in terms of using stabilization and free cash is that it's one-time funding. So while we think it's justified to use this to really avoid a calamity with a lot of layoffs and a lot of other cuts in services, if the worst happens with state aid and with revenue generally, we need to think about the impact on 2022 and how we're going to replace that. So we're hoping that the state aid reductions won't be as bad as anticipated, but that's just something for this board and the school committee as we're looking at making a recommendation to town meeting and the warrant committee to keep in mind that we're talking about using one-time money for recurring operating expenses. And there have been times in the past when town meeting members have proposed taking money out of the stabilization fund. The town meeting has been very, very reluctant to do that. I remember it happening, I think it was 2007, it was a year after an override, and we ended up having some layoffs the following year, and there were town meeting members who wanted to tap the stabilization fund, which was a lot smaller then than it is now. And that didn't happen. Town meeting said no to that. So I think where we're going to be recommending using some stabilization funds, and since we'll need a 2/3 vote of town meeting, we need to have broad consensus by everybody at the front of the room, so to speak, which may not be a physical front of the room anymore for this town meeting. But we're going to need to have the warrant committee, our board, the school committee, the other elected boards, big general consensus that that's the way to go. And hopefully we would be able to have a commitment that we would replace the monies in the stabilization fund. It might take us several years to do it, but we probably want to have a plan so that over the next X number of years, our goal is going to be to, out of free cash in future years, to replace that money so that we're bringing our stabilization fund back to the level that we'd like it to be at. You can make an argument that where it hasn't been used considerably, and there's been quite a bit of interest income that's built up. So in one sense, we're using some of the interest income rather than our principal. I know it's all, you don't really separate it out that way, but you can think of it in that sense that we've built up quite a bit of interest income. So what we're withdrawing is we're preserving some of the principal and using some of the interest income. That's just one way of looking at it. But it's just important to note that these are one-time monies that will be used for operating expenses so that the general public understands that.
Thank you, Katie. Other comments or questions from the members? Mr. Wells.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr.
So I fortunately having the benefit of being through this before, not as bad as, a different type of calamity, but as Glenn and Mary, Sheila, even Katie, I remember back when that happened, that was around the Obama administration had to come out with a stimulus package after that. Part of the reason we have the stabilization is the rainy day fund. You hear the governor and the chief legislators talking about how they're going to have to tap into theirs. I agree with Katie. I think that if we take a collective front, a couple of good aspects. Hopefully we may not get any new hires. We may have to freeze hiring as it is now, but hopefully we don't have to lay anyone off. I think the goal here right now is to protect the infrastructure of our community as it exists. Town services, school services, things that people exist. I think that the plan that the finance committee, the town administrator, Mr. Dennehy, Amy, the town accountant, and all the school personnel, Glenn, Sheila, all of them, Mary, have done putting this together. I think it's a good path for us to go forward, and I would recommend we approve it, and collectively we all begin starting today to work towards achieving it.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? So I'll just add, I became a member of the warrant committee in 2009, which was the Great Recession, or the first year after the Great Recession. And the budgeting that we went through on the warrant committee at that time, year after year, was exactly this kind of conservative budgeting, which is we're going to be conservative, and if things turn out better, we can put money back. And that's what we did. That's what we did year after year. And we had a plan for if the worst happens, we'll budget conservatively. If it gets better, here's where we're going to put money back in. So I think, to the extent that we follow that model here, then it benefits us. It is a very good thing that seems like there's consensus from the school committee and the select board on this, and the finance committees, and the town administration and the school administration, and there's one more player in that, which is the warrant committee. So we will talk to them. One thing I wanted to mention, just to flesh out what Katie mentioned about the stabilization fund, just so the public knows, the stabilization fund currently has about $4.8 million in it. That is the quote unquote rainy day fund, right? And so the current proposal has us, in order to stabilize things for FY21, has us taking $1 million out of that. So that will leave us with $3.8 million thereabouts, which was the balance about 3 years ago, 2016, almost 4 years ago now. So we are going a little bit backward in terms of what we have in the stabilization fund, but as has been pointed out, this is why we have the stabilization fund, and this is why we built it up since the Great Recession. So that seems to make a lot of sense to me. I think it's good that we have consensus. The question in my mind is, Katie, really to you, is this something that we want to vote on tonight and then take to the warrant committee? I know we do have some time constraints because we got to get a warrant out, and our town meeting is going to be June 15th. So is this something we want to vote tonight?
I think what we were hoping at yesterday's meeting was that we would get some kind of a sense from this board. So we could take a vote or a consensus, but we wanted to get a sense of what everyone's thinking was in terms of using stabilization and free cash. as I understand it, the town accountant and the town administrator and the assistant superintendent for business and the superintendent are all kind of still working on some of the details. There was a little bit of conversation around the capital budget. And if we're going to use free cash for the operating budget, then that means that $800,000 of the capital committee voted for projects such as the Pope's Pond Bridge and some Chromebooks for the schools and I forget what for the parks, but different, there's probably 10 or 12 items on that list. And those will not be funded this year if we take this approach. So what we talked about was considering and maybe having Amy Dexter, who's also the co-chair of the capital committee as well as the accountant, consider going through that list and coming up with a couple of priorities and seeing whether we might want to think about applying a little bit of money from the capital stabilization fund to them. That's a different stabilization account. Again, it's one-time money for the benefit of the residents who are watching and even the employees who are watching. This is not, you know, I want them to understand that we're talking about funds that are not a recurring source of funding every year. So we're talking one-time money, but the idea was to go back and look at that and see whether we might apply any of the capital stabilization fund to the top priorities, and maybe even consider whether some of the departmental budgets could pick up some of those costs, or if there's a way to pay for them this year rather than next year. So there were some alternatives like that that were going to be considered by the administration and the town management. And so in that sense, this is not final yet, but I think we're looking at least for the board to, whether or not the board would approve up to $1 million from the stabilization and the balance of the free cash, which I think is a little under 1.5 million, 1.48 million in that ballpark. Amy probably has the exact number. So yeah, we'd like to get this sense of the board as to adopting this approach.
Okay.
Subject to the details being finalized and going to the warrant committee.
Okay, and let me ask Mr. Dennehy, Mike, if we approve the final budget next Wednesday, does that give us enough time? If we approve it in concept and the use of stabilization and the use of free cash tonight, and then work on the details over the next week so that we can approve the specific items next Wednesday, does that work from a timing perspective?
It does, because both finance committees are to meet again next Monday morning, so we'll have more refined numbers from the town accountant. She continues to work through the capital improvement planning committee stuff, free cash, and just to qualify, Katie, I believe the free cash was 1.76 million, I believe. But Amy has that.
I thought it was a little lower because I thought there were some that we couldn't, of that 1.7 that we couldn't use. So I thought we were down to 1.4 or 1.5, but.
Oh, I think you're correct. Yeah, Amy, if you want to just add to that, I apologize. Yeah, you're right.
So yeah, it's about $1,482,000 because we had already recommended appropriating some to some one-time items in the budget that cannot be reduced, such as some one-time administrative costs and mitigation fees in the insurance area that won't recur in 2022. So we still need to hold that aside for that purpose.
So let me suggest this, Katie. Do you want to make a motion to approve to have the board approve or support up to a certain amount of funds from the stabilization fund and up to a certain amount of free cash funds to use to balance the FY21 budget? Then we can have a vote on that, and then we can vote the specifics next week.
Sure, I'll move that.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Mr. Wells, yes.
Just if Katie would accept this as a friendly, I do send a capital. Amy was proactive, reached out to us today, just to give these members a chance to digest this. Moving forward, would it be permissible if we just approve the cap stab, the $1 million tonight, and then do the capital reductions, the free cash, moving it from capital to this at our next meeting? Would that be all right?
My understanding, Richard, was that the capital committee was not going to meet again to discuss this, but that's what, at least the impression I had from the discussions we were having. Is the capital committee going to meet?
Well, Amy, you can speak. Amy sent an email today. You can speak to it if you want.
Yeah, so my intent as chair of the capital committee is to call a remote meeting to discuss it, but not to take a vote, because I feel that the recommendation of the capital committee should stand, so that in table 9, it's the original recommendation. In the event that some available funds some funds become available, that we can put it back in. So I just wanted, out of courtesy, to have a meeting of the committee to update them on what was going on with the budget. I gave them a heads up kind of last minute today in email about this meeting so that they could listen in if they wanted to. But I just want the meeting to explain to them why the board and why town management and school are considering this.
I think that
The
makes
importance
sense.
of it.
And I think that can happen because that really is directed at what, from the capital stabilization fund, might alternatively fund a couple of these capital items. So I think that's a separate conversation. So I don't think, Richard, I don't think it affects the issue that you're talking about. I think the capital committee can still do that work. So I'll move that.
Okay, I'm fine with that then.
Okay, so I'll move that our board, I guess our board support and recommend the use of approximately $1,482,000 from free cash and up to $1 million from the stabilization fund for purposes of the FY21 operating budget.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Oh, Mr. Well, just a minute, Amy. I'm just going to suggest a friendly amendment. Katie, instead of using the word approximately on the first, the 1.482 from stabilization, we say up to, as you did with the free cash, just in case there are, so that's my friendly amendment.
I'll accept that.
All right. Amy.
Yeah, my only concern is the wording of the motion. Does that wording, will that conflict with the fact that we've already used some in the operating budget? I don't want to undo what's already been done with the remaining balance of the free cash. And by the wording of that, it sounds like maybe that could be potentially a problem.
Well, what we're saying, Amy, is we're recommending and approving the use of up to the 1.083 of free cash. So that doesn't mean we have to, or you have to use all of that. And you may use.
No.
I think she's talking about the flip side of that.
Yeah.
I think Amy's asking that the motion say up to 7 million?
Oh, I see. You want a higher amount in case it goes higher. I see what you're saying. I see.
No, I would like to use the full amount because we've already used some. And if you say up to $1,482,000, I think the amount we've already used comes off the table.
Got it.
So I'll change that to up to 1.764 if that's the correct number.
1,764,662 to be exact.
$1,764,662 of free cash.
All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? I will just say this, on the use of free cash and stabilization, we're talking about the use of approximately $2.5 million in one-time funds, which will result in our stabilization fund being diminished to $3.8 million. It also means that we will start the next fiscal year $2.5 million in the hole, which means if there's another $2.5 million deficit for FY22, then our deficit will be higher than what's in our stabilization fund. So this isn't free money. This is a Band-Aid. It's not a fix. And so we have a lot of work to do in order to make sure that this doesn't come back to bite us in FY22, because if things continue the way they are, then even though we have $3.8 million left in stabilization, if our deficit in FY22 is $5 million, that's not going to help us very much, or it's not going to get us there. So anyway, just that caveat that the use of the free cash and stabilization does create a hole for FY22 that could be greater than what is left in stabilization. Any other comments or questions? Not to be a downer, but
That's why I think we're going to have to monitor it very closely, because it may be that if we see things really not improving and really getting worse, then we're going to have to look at other cuts during the course of the year so that we're addressing it before we hit a really significant hole for FY22. But we're all hoping for the best here, and we don't know what's going to happen with state aid. We're hoping that we might end up with a better Chapter 70 position than what we think we might, or better unrestricted general government aid than what we're projecting right now. And it is a very conservative approach that Amy and Mike are taking, but I think it's, and Glenn and others are supporting, but I think it's the right way to approach FY21.
all right.
I have one comment. Oh, can I make a comment?
Yes, please, Amy.
Sorry. I just wanted anyone listening to also be aware that by doing this, the town and schools are still going to also be asked to make some reductions to the already balanced FY21 budget, because we still have approximately 500,000 to 600,000 of a shortfall. So this is a combination of using free cash stabilization funds and also sharpening our pencils to find some savings, to find some reductions that won't completely decimate departments. And this approach would result in a level of service consistent with FY20 is what we believe. So I just wanted to be really clear that it doesn't mean we're just plugging the hole and not trying to find savings and reductions, because that is part of what Glenn and I and Mike, the finance subcommittee and the school committee finance committee are working on in the next several days into next Monday's meeting.
It's a very good point, Amy, that this effort to balance FY21 results from cuts along with the use of free cash and stabilization in order to meet the need of this economic crisis. It's a very good point. It's important to be made. Any other comments or questions from members? All those in favor, it's a roll call vote. Ms. Collins? Is a roll call vote, Ms. Collins? Ms. Collins, are you there? I'm afraid she might be frozen again. Hillary, could you reach out to Melinda? Melinda, can you hear me? No, she's.
Yes, I can. I think you're right that she is frozen again.
Okay, all right. So this is a roll call vote. Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. And Hillary, have you been able to get Melinda? Oh, there she is. Melinda, roll call vote on the motion.
Yes.
All right. All right.
Sorry.
No, that's great. All right. Well, thank you to our school committee and school administration friends, and
Yes.
and to our town accountant, who's doing a great job on this, and our certainly the assistant superintendent for business, the superintendent, school committee chair, school committee vice chair, finance committee, and obviously the town accountant and town administrator. This is a lot of work, and we're making it happen. So they deserve a lot of credit. So thank you all. Item 9, discussion approval of reopening and closing the annual town meeting warrant. This is a follow-on of our last meeting when we discussed possibly coming up with a shortened warrant for the town meeting, which is scheduled on June 15th. The reason for that, as we discussed before, would be if we do whether we do a virtual town meeting or a town meeting outside, it would be beneficial, so some think, and has been presented, to have a shorter warrant, primarily of the budget article, so we can approve a budget and anything that is really necessary. So that was the beginning of the discussion we had last time, and now we're at the point where we need to start making some decisions, because the warrant is going to have to be we're going to have to go to press, and other boards and committees need to know, such as the planning board, the warrant committee, they need to know what we intend to put on the warrant for June and what we may want to put on the warrant for a subsequent meeting when we can have a more fulsome town meeting, hopefully later in the summer. So with that framing, the sense that I had from the meeting that we had last time was that the view of the board was to skinny up the warrant so that it's the budget articles for June 15th, so that it would include just the budget articles and any necessary short-term articles. So with that framing, I'll ask if we have a motion to reopen the warrant for the June 15, 2020 town meeting.
So moved.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded. It's a roll call vote. Ms. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Farrington,
Yes.
Mr. Well,
Yes.
Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. And so now the warrant is reopened. We have our list of non-budget articles, which number approximately 5, 8, about 12 non-budget articles. So the question is, which of those do we want to remove from the warrant? And then we'd also need to include an article for the use of stabilization funds for the FY21 budget. So comments and questions from the members on removing non-budget articles from the warrant.
Mr. Chair, I think that we want to follow along the course we outlined at the last meeting, which was to keep the budget articles as well as the stormwater article and the electronic delivery of the warrants article. And I would also include, because I see it on the list who wants to vote, at 35, to authorize the select board to accept easements. That's just a standard article that's always in, and we really need that for every year. So I would keep that one.
May I ask before we have is Amy Dexter still on the line? Amy?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Amy, can I just ask you on, and I'm sorry, I apologize for jumping in on the members. I just, before you leave, is the PEG access and cable related fund, is that something, that's something we've done before. What happens if we don't do that one by June 30th?
That one's critical. We can't send the fees that we owe Milton to Access TV. So that will be very harmful to them.
Okay.
I think we're contractually obligated to pay them, and I can't pay them if we don't have that appropriation.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry, Amy. That's what I thought. I just wanted to get that out there before you left. Melinda, did you have something? I'm sorry, I jumped in.
Oh no, that actually was my that was my first question. My second question was about the circuit breaker, and I didn't know if the Board of Assessors had anything to say about that. It seems that, but if we're meeting later in the summer, it seems as if that it could wait till then. I just didn't know if maybe Mike Dennehy had some insight for us.
Unfortunately, Madam Vice Chair, I don't. I know that they put it together and held a meeting in late February to update the town meeting article to be more specific, but have not had a conversation with them regarding the timeliness of this article.
Okay, I'm sorry I didn't bring that up earlier. I was just wondering because it seems to have some bearing on people's financial situations.
So to flesh that out, for those who may not have been following this, the circuit breaker is what would allow us to lower the rate of the interest rate for repayment and allow a higher tax deferral for seniors. And again, what we're trying to do is eliminate as many articles as we can particularly articles that would be controversial. That one, I'll just jump in and say I think that one's important, particularly in this time. And my hope is that wouldn't be that controversial. So I'm breaking my rule in thinking that we should keep this as limited as possible. But I tend to think that in this time that one could be very helpful to our seniors. So.
The other thing it does is raise the income limit, because the income limit has been such that it's really precluded quite a few people from taking advantage who really do need it.
Right.
So
go ahead, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I'm curious what everyone thinks.
Yeah. So we have PEG access. We have the easements, which I think are important, but really ministerial and shouldn't be controversial. Stormwater management is required by statute for us to do by June 30th. So that one seems to be something we should do. And then we have electronic delivery of warrants. And Katie, maybe you could walk through the rationale on that one, the importance of that one.
On 38, the electronic delivery?
Yeah.
Well, the thought there is that there would be a savings of some costs and printing and additional effort that goes into getting the warrants to the households. If we were to revise the bylaws so that town meeting warrants would not be delivered to every household in town, but would be made available electronically. There would be some printed copies at the council, not the council on aging, at the library and at town hall, but paper copies would be provided to town meeting members and town officials. And we distinguish that between the election warrants and the town meeting warrants. And I know Kevin Freitag is still on the line. Kevin revised both the article and the draft recommendation for the warrant committee to make some changes so that it's not a choice for the board to have, so that every year the board would decide whether we mail it or not, which is how it was drafted previously. It just says that instead of delivering the warrant to the households, that electronic delivery is really the way that most people would receive or have the opportunity to receive the warrant. We did talk a little bit on a call a few days ago with the town clerk about election warrants, and that's, as I understand it, and if I mistake this, Kevin will correct me, that's really governed by state law. It's not discussed in our bylaws. We've typically mailed both the election warrants and the town meeting warrants. And for the annual town meeting and the annual election, they've been a combined warrant. But the thinking is that we would not mail election warrants either. We're just not addressing it through the bylaw. We would just be compliant with the statute, which requires less than what the level of notice and the type of notice we've provided historically. So that would change also, but it's just not a bylaw change.
So arguably, this addresses a post-COVID-19 world where electronic delivery and these things can actually be more efficient and help us get what we need to get done what we need to do at a subsequent town meeting. So we have PEG access, easements, stormwater, electronic delivery, and then I would make an argument for the circuit breaker as well. Although if that causes others to come on, I guess I wouldn't push for it if it causes others. We do want to keep this as limited as possible. But anyway, other thoughts or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to make that in the form of a motion for those articles.
Article 29 is the stabilization fund article, and I think that's the appropriation, but I think we just need to check with town council whether we can use the same article to withdraw money as well as add money, or whether we need a separate article. So we may need to add an article for that as well, as you stated earlier, Mr. Chair, but it's possible we could use the existing article and just expand it to include not only an appropriation, but an expenditure.
Sorry.
I was just
Council Kevin Cook. Can we put a place marker right there for that right now? Just put it right there and give it a number.
Yeah. Kevin's actually here, and Kevin, I don't want to put you on the spot. I know it's kind of real time, but do do you think it makes sense, as Richard suggests, which I think is a good one, to kind of put a placeholder in the event that we need an article to remove funds from stabilization in the event that Article 29 doesn't meet that purpose?
Yes, I do. And I think that given the fact that we have a deadline to get our warrant to the printer, which gives us a little bit more breathing room, I can take a look at that issue for you immediately and have an answer for you by the end of the week. And if this was something that needed to be addressed, it could be at the next a meeting of the select board next week. I can also just piggyback on that, and looking at the electronic delivery of warrants, there's a slight tweak that I would like to make to what I sent to the board in reviewing the bylaws again tonight. It appears that the warrant committee's report is actually separately called out in the bylaw. The report itself, which is always included as part of our warrant, but that report would also need to be delivered electronically. So I just want to make sure that our article captures their report as well as the warrant, which are sort of identified separately in the bylaws, but always mailed together. So for both of those reasons, I think it makes sense to contemplate just having an additional follow-up next week where we can talk about both of those things.
All right, but I would like, to Richard's point, I would like to get a vote on what to remove as much as we can to give some guidance to the other boards and committees. So I think, Richard, what we're talking about was removing Article 37, which is prudent investment, removing Articles 39, which is the Milton Village mixed-use PUD, Article 40, which is the carryover expenditure article, Article 41, which is the Milton Village revolving fund, Article 42, which is the Milton Village historical preservation revolving fund, Article 43, which is the amendment to the bylaws for affordable housing provision, Article 44, which is the Community Preservation Act. I think those were the ones that we're talking about removing. Is that?
I have one question. It's for Amy. I think 41 we may want because that involves monies that start going into an account on July 1. I think we need to get that one done.
I'm not really familiar with why the purpose of that one.
So that's the revolving fund for rents. Go ahead.
No, Ms.
Well, Richard, does that, I know that came out of, or is coming out of the Milton Village zoning, but I didn't know if it was already planned before the zoning started. So those two revolving funds travel along with the rest of the Milton Village zoning, but is it for something else too?
So the revolving fund for Milton Village, I believe. Oh no, I'm correct. We already passed it.
Okay, yeah, I thought there was something. Okay,
we already passed it. Okay.
Yeah, that's a different. Yeah, this is a different one.
Yeah, the landing we've already passed. You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking at so many words here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melinda.
Okay.
I'll second the motion. If the motion was to remove Articles 37, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44, if that's Richard's motion, I'll second it.
That is my motion.
Motion's been made.
And a placeholder. And put a placeholder for, I don't know if we did that.
I think we'll make that a separate motion. So we're going to.
Okay. So that's my motion. And we can go back to the other one.
Yep.
Thank you.
So motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells? Ms. Conlon?
Sorry, yes, I muted myself. I apologize.
That's all right. And Mr. Zulish, yes. Okay, so now why don't we need three more motions. One would be to include an article for removal of or use of stabilization funds. Two would be to remove and insert the revised Article 36 on stormwater. And the third would be to remove and insert in Article 40, the current, not Article 40, I'm sorry, Article 38, the revised article for alternative delivery. So I think that's three different motions. Again, first would be to include in the warrant an article for use of stabilization funds.
Move that we include in the warrant an article for the use of the stabilization funds.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon? And Mr. Zulish, yes. And Ms. Conlon did say yes. I couldn't quite hear her, but yeah, yes. Yeah. All right, so that's good. So now we have two articles that were tweaked. Article 36, which was the stormwater. So I'll entertain a motion to remove the Article 36 and insert a revised Article 36 in the warrant.
I'll make a motion to remove the original Article 36 and reinsert the revised Article 36 into the warrant.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon? Mr. Zulish, yes. All right, and finally, I think finally, we will have a motion on removing current Article 38, which is the electronic delivery of warrants, and inserting the revised article.
I'll move that we remove the original version of Article 38 and insert the revised version drafted by town.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. So thank you. I think that will help give the administration and some of our boards and committees some guidance. I think we want to wait on closing the warrant because
I agree.
Because there are going to, I think there are going to be some revisions, some tweaks to the electronic delivery, and also we have to get the language on the use of and a number for the use of the stabilization fund. My suggestion is to, unless it doesn't make any sense, is to keep the warrant open until our next meeting so we get that clarified.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we have precedent for this, don't we, Mr. Chair? We've done this before.
Yeah,
I've done it recently, but we haven't usually done that because if you leave it open, you run the risk of a citizen dropping off an article and you get the warrant open. So, I mean, it's usually been opened and closed on the same night. And then if you have to open and close it again, you can do that. But it's unlikely to happen at this point. And I think everyone knows the circumstance. We're not looking for more articles if we're taking articles out, but it used to be unusual to do that, but I guess.
I mean, Katie, if the normal course is to open, we can always open and close in our next meeting with any changes. So that probably makes sense. Yeah, that probably makes sense procedurally. So,
All right, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to close the warrant for June 15, 2020 town meeting.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. The warrant is closed, and we will discuss anything additional next week. Okay. Let's see. That is item 9. Item 10, topics that the chair did not read. I see we didn't include a TA's report on this. I'm going to ask Mr. Dennehy if he has a report. We'll put that under topics that I did not reasonably anticipate because I didn't reasonably anticipate a report. So, Mr. Dennehy, do you have anything to update us on?
I just want to mention that I attended the thank you today up at Milton BID Hospital. It was a huge outpouring. Specifically a thank you to all of the Milton's healthcare heroes. It was put on at BID Milton in coordination with the first responders in town. I saw apparatus from Stoughton and Holbrook and Canton and Quincy and Randolph and helicopters and state police. It was an unbelievable event. Very, very well deserved. And obviously we're still in the middle of this crisis, but just to see those apparatus and first responders there today and the support that was shown for them was really moving, and I thought it was quite a tribute in real time as they deal with these things on a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis. So I thank all the communities that supported this effort, Lieutenant Caputo and all the members of Milton Police, Milton Fire, Fallon Ambulance, and the other communities that I mentioned. And I apologize if I missed one. I don't know if I mentioned Holbrook. I saw a Holbrook vehicle there, and there may have been some that I missed, but it was tremendous and very well attended.
No, it was a great event. There's no question. The other thing that we neglected to put on the agenda, and we can have it on for next Wednesday, but I will mention it under the topics not reasonably anticipated because it's not on the agenda, but I'll just highlight it. Ms. Collins and I attended a conference call, or participated in a conference call with Mass Housing last Thursday that was organized by Senator Timilty, attended by Representative Driscoll, and we discussed this before it happened last week. It was Ms. Collins, myself, Mr. Dennehy, Judy Barrett, our consultant, and I don't have my notes with me, but several members of Mass Housing, including Mike Busby, Kat Miller, Paul McMorrow, and Paul McMorrow and Nancy McDonald. It was the purpose of the meeting was to really press our case on the 40B comment letters that we have recently filed for Blue Hill Ave, Canton Ave, East Milton, and also the Ice House, to have communication with them, to seek their assistance, to seek collaboration and their assistance going forward, and to seek some time, frankly. So it was a very full discussion for about an hour. We can give more details when we put it on the agenda, but I think it was a good opportunity for us to make our case. In addition to the cases we made in writing, a good opportunity for us to make the case talking to them and discussing it with them. So more on that next week. I'll have my notes in front of me, and Ms. Collins can obviously add, but thank you to Senator Timilty for organizing that, and certainly to Representative Driscoll for participating as well. So that'll be on, we'll make sure we have that on the agenda for next week so we can talk about it in detail. Future meeting dates, I think we agreed to, that's item 10. Item 11, future meeting dates. I think we agreed to meet next Wednesday at 7. Is that right? Hillary or Mike, is that the 6th?
That is what I have, Mr. Chair.
I have the 6th at 7 p.m.
Okay, all right. So, so we'll go forward with that to square up the warrant and some of these other things that we need to move forward on. A public comment response, we had no public comment. And then items 13 and 14 are executive session. So I will move to enter into executive session to discuss the following business, believing that having such discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board, and not to return to open session. That business is item 13, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, specifically with the Milton Patrol Officers Unit. And 14, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, specifically the Milton Superior Officers Unit. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. It's going to be a roll call vote. Ms. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. So we will adjourn to executive session, and we will see you again